Everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Clarity Container. My name is Omika, I'm your host, and today I have a very special guest. I have Asees Singh here with me. She's visiting Austin, so we're doing a little podcast recording, and she's an amazing woman with so many different talents and interests, and I met her last year, actually right before I moved out of New York, and we've been following each other since, and I feel like we have a lot in common, and I think you have a lot of light and wisdom to share with the world, so I'm excited to chat with you. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you. What an amazing introduction.
Yeah, well, why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, where you are right now, and how you got there.
I wanted to say thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it, and your introduction was so nice. But yes, I'm Asees Singh. I am a communications professional. I've been working in PR for about 15 years. And simultaneous to that, I've also been dancing and building a career around dance. Most recently, I've ventured into women's mindset and movement coaching. And I am currently in New York City working full time and building out my movement and mindset coaching practice there.
Amazing. And what inspired you to get into that coaching practice and help others?
Yeah, so I think after COVID-19 happened, I actually got COVID very early on. So I think I remember waking up one day with a fever, heard rumblings about COVID, but I didn't equate the two. And I went about my day, and then that fever became very high, and then COVID-19 rumblings became even more.
Yeah.
I was down, and I from that point on, so this was early March 2020, I feel like I had a long COVID, and it really affected me, as I'm sure it affected a lot of people. But after that, I was actually, I had started a dance company, I co-founded a dance company, and COVID-19 was kind of the end of that dance company as we knew it. And so having COVID, going through the end of a first company, sort of like a passion project that was over now. I was in a position that I didn't love, just felt really down and was very upset and was trying to figure out how to get myself out of that rut. And I eventually moved out of New York. I was in New York at the time, moved back to California. And I feel like I felt a light and found a light there. And I came across what's called the Integrative Institute of Nutrition, learned a little bit more about it, and started my process of becoming a certified health coach. And thinking about coaching and thinking about my life as a dancer, I was trying to figure out how can I bring these two aspects together, because I understood the power and I understand the power of dance. It's been with me since I was 8 years old, so I've been dancing for over 25 years. And as an instructor in New York through SA Groups, which was the dance company, a lot of people would come up to my co-founder and I after classes and just sort of talk about like the inspiration they felt, how they had overcome maybe a fear of dancing in front of people or felt good about themselves and their body, and recognizing those feelings and impact and how I could continue to do that even after dance is still prominent in my life, but it's not a main thing. Coaching was the way that I could blend that together by bringing the mindset aspect of, helping women feel powerful, confident, find femininity as a superpower, and couple that with movement, which is what dance is.
That's amazing. Yeah, I feel like nowadays everyone is talking about somatic healing and the importance of working with your body to work through a lot of that mindset stuff, right? I think in the past it was very much in your head or very masculine of like, let's think through it or let's sit down and meditate, which are great things to know about as well. But I think people are waking up to the power of the body, and, the body keeps the score and the body doesn't say no and all these things. And it's cool that you're able to tap into something that you have experienced for 25 plus years and you already know the power of it, and you don't have to necessarily learn a brand new modality. It's not like a revolutionary thing. It's kind of going back to the basics and going back to what you already know intuitively helps you, and being able to spread that. So I think that's super cool. And so as you've been transitioning from SA Grooves, and are you still doing that now, or?
No, we don't do SA Grooves anymore.
Okay.
But my co-founder and I do do workshops together
Okay.
every now and then.
Cool. And so in what ways are you dancing and bringing movement into your own life right now?
Yeah, so dance for me today looks a lot different than I think it did even like 5 years ago. And dance in general across my life has been a series of like peaks and valleys, I'll call it. So started dancing when I was 8 years old, just a little girl. This is gonna date me, but it's okay. You know, age is great. Aging is great.
Yes.
As an 8-year-old watching Janet Jackson on TV,
Oh my gosh.
wanting to like emulate her movement and dance, to trying out for my high school dance team as a freshman, not making it, crying at home, but then joining my high school's dance program, which I gratefully went to a high school that had a really good dance program. So I started training every day from basically sophomore year through my senior year, learning jazz, hip hop, elements of like ballet and lyrical. And so dance has been with me for a very long time. And graduating high school, going to college, and after college, I actually danced professionally with a dance troupe in LA, and got to do really amazing things like perform on the Ellen Show, do red carpet events, was on TV shows, performed at the Hollywood Bowl, and I've continued to just do it either professionally or as a hobby. And I feel like eventually coming to New York, starting SA Grooves, that was something that I was very passionate about, and we were very passionate about starting this genre of like almost like we were both trained in hip hop, so hip hop, and then the South Asian aspect, and bringing that to the dance scene in New York. But today, I think dance for me is something that I look to as an escape, as a way for me to feel good about myself and my body. And I've actually started to do a lot more heels classes. For anybody who doesn't know what heels classes are, you wear a stiletto heel and you dance.
It's very impressive.
Sometimes it's very sensual movement. I find that movement to be so empowering, because I think that like one of the pillars I have as a coach is that, and I work with women, is femininity is your superpower. I think that we are seen through the male gaze, which can make women feel or be seen as or conveyed as, hypersexual, or your body shouldn't move that way. Your body shouldn't look that way. And I think today when I go to a dance class and I go into that heels class and I'm wearing my stiletto heels and, we dance to a suggestive song, I find power in that, because I think at the end of the day, like, I dance for myself. I do it because I love it. I do it because when I walk into that studio, I feel a level of confidence, and I look into the mirror, and even if sometimes I don't like the way I look, by the end of the class, I'm like, you did that. And you look good.
Yes.
Even though like you may not be so happy in your body at this moment, you did this and your body did that for you. And as a 38-year-old woman, like, you're still doing it.
Yes, that's beautiful. It's almost like this reclamation of self and taking up space, right? I feel like so much of the time as women, we're taught to shrink ourselves, like physically, but also in the way we speak or how we're showing up in the world, in the workplace. And like you said, when someone is moving in a more sensual way, it's like, oh, she just wants attention, or, she's doing it for all these wrong reasons, when actually the female body is an amazing thing and a creation, right? And we get to experience it during our time on earth.
And I think the other aspect of that is dance in particular. I think out of the creative art forms, like there's a lot of them, right? But for some reason, dance has like a level of scrutiny against it. And I feel like it's especially prominent within the South Asian community. And I don't know why, because I think like whatever form of dance you do, there's a lot of training involved.
Yes.
You can't just like go out into a class, or you go to a class to learn, but you don't just like go out and just like whip out stuff. Then I just learned that yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm going to whip it out professionally tomorrow. Like there's a level of training involved to refine, to learn, to understand the movement, to be able to like do a clean line. And I think that's lost by a lot of people because they just see a finished product.
Right.
They
And
don't
what do you mean?
They don't understand like the finished product is not just like the presentation. There's a lot that went into that to make the presentation look the way it was or look the way it does, and to be received the way it was received, or people who look at it and say like, that was very good. Like, to look at the technique, to look at, you know, a facial, that doesn't just come overnight.
Exactly. Yeah. And what do you mean by the scrutiny that you've seen?
So I feel like with dance in particular, from what I've seen in the South Asian community, there's a level of dismissiveness when it comes to like the performance art of dance. And I don't know why. Like, I always wondered to myself, like, why is that? I think, and what I mean by that is I'll see like, you know, dancers may not be compensated for their artwork, for the stuff they do. Or somebody will look at it and be like, what's so great about that? Like, I could do that. Could you? Yeah. Could you actually do that? Could you go do a pirouette? Could you do a double?
Yeah.
Could you, like, you know, pop lock your body in a way that actually looks like you're pop locking? Like, you know, I think there's a lot of dismissiveness in that regard.
For sure. Yeah. I've definitely experienced that too with my sisters and I when we were posting TikToks. Like, we've been training in dance since we were all 3 years old, and we've trained classically in ballet, modern, all of it. And people would, you know, sometimes just see it, especially if they're not familiar with it, and they say things like, oh, that's just like really cute, and you guys are just cute little girls, you know, bopping around in your backyard. And it's like, no, this actually took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, 600,000 people don't think that way. Or maybe
but
more
yeah.
now.
But yeah, no, I've totally experienced that. But yes, dance is amazing. A beautiful way to find confidence and be in your body, and I think everyone can really benefit from it. I wanted to talk also about I know you, on your Instagram, you have a series called The Single Diaries, which is a very clever, cute name.
Thank you.
So I wanted to talk about that and hear where that came from, what is the origin of it, and yeah, tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think a lot, like, who I am today, I feel like a lot of the work has been in the past few years, like getting to a point where I could put myself out there with a series called The Single Diaries, in a world that celebrates coupledom, families. To be single as a late 30s woman is difficult. I think a lot of women get asked questions about their personal life. I think as a single woman, it's a lot of it. What I've experienced has been like, when are you getting married? Don't you want to get married? And those questions are difficult to be asked and to hear it over and over again. And so with Single Diaries, I kind of got to a point where I was just like, I'm going to own this. Like, I am single. This is my life. What's bad about it? Like, what is bad about being single? Nothing. Nothing is bad about being single. You just haven't found your partner yet. Like, I haven't met my partner yet. And that is okay to be single, to be in your late 30s. And I wanted to show that. And I wanted to talk about topics like how being single is okay, how, you know, different aspects of being single in your 30s is, there's the couple aspect of not having a partner, but then there's also just other aspects of life in your 30s when you're single, when it comes to like friendships and when it comes to just the things we face in this age range. And so Single Diaries is a series I created to show my life in New York City as a single woman and all the stuff that comes with it, whether it's good, whether it's bad, but it's really just to show that being single is just a part of life.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Exactly. It's almost silly that you have to do all of that to normalize it, because it's like people have all these defaults and yeah, just so many misconceptions about what it's like. But I feel like by you even just showing up and just talking about your life, it's like, it's providing representation in like, it's almost weird to say that, but it's like helping people like see themselves in you, right? If they're also in the same boat and seeing that there's nothing wrong with it, like, you are allowed to have fun and enjoy your life. You're not missing out on anything. It actually can be really positive in some instances, right? You don't have to wait around for someone to do things, or you're not tied down by any specific thing. You can really pursue your interests and focus on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the big thing is, and I think especially if it's South Asian women.
Yes.
I'm sure you probably have heard this. I heard it not growing up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, growing up. Don't date, don't date, don't date.
Mhm.
Graduate college. Okay, when you're getting married. When you're getting married, but also, like, we don't like the people that you date.
Right?
So,
No one's ever good enough.
No one's ever good. Nobody is ever
Yeah.
good enough. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Nobody was ever good enough. And then for me, COVID happens. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm 33 years old. COVID is happening. And now I'm 38. And I go on dates.
Yeah.
Dating is difficult. We could talk about dating in a different, or if you want to talk about
Yeah.
it now. But yeah, it's the questions that come about, like, when you're getting married and why are you single and all of that stuff still goes on.
Yeah. And in what ways do you feel like those conversations have changed in your 30s versus when you were younger, both from what people are asking you, but also how you react to it?
So I feel like earlier I would be taken aback by it. They'd be like, okay, why are you single? I would get defensive. I'd go like, what do you mean, why am I single? I just like, I don't know. Like, nobody likes me. Like, that would be my default. Like, nobody loves me. And I do it to my sisters too. And they're like, because shut up. But in a loving way. But I feel like now my friends will be like, do you want me to introduce you to somebody? And I think before I would be like, no. No, I don't want to be introduced to anybody. And now I think I'm more open to it. So I feel like the change is my perspective of being introduced to somebody isn't a bad thing. But I'm also less defensive. So why are you single? And I'd be like, I haven't met my person yet. And that's it. Like, I just haven't met them.
Yeah.
So
it's as simple as that, right? Yeah. I feel like people sometimes want to extrapolate more details or want to make assumptions when there really aren't any. It's like, okay, this is my life. Like, what is the point?
Sometimes the answer is the simplest thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there is nothing, it's not that deep.
Yeah.
And what about with your family? How has that relationship evolved for you?
I think similarly. I feel like we don't talk about it as much. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also because I made it a point to, like, talk to my parents about my singledom or being single as not a detriment to my life. I think that I've had really interesting conversations with my mom where I've talked about, like, I don't want to get married just for the sake of getting married. I don't think it's a solution. I don't think that getting married solves anything. Marriage in and of itself is you are combining two people's lives together, and they have to figure out how to blend their lives. If you just do that for the sake of doing it, I don't see how that can lead to anything amazing, unless both people are on the same page with a level of, like, respect for one another and want to work it out together. But I think that's the case whether you find a love marriage or not. I just haven't met somebody where I feel, like, compelled enough to say, I would want to do that with you.
Yeah.
So, and I've had those conversations with my parents and my mom will, I think the part that, like, gets to me is my parents will say, like, we just want to see you, like, we don't want you to be alone. And I think that, like, gets to me because I also don't want to be alone.
Of course.
And I want my parents to know that as they get older, they have a bit of a settled feeling that, like, their daughter is going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so to that end, I also say and make sure that they know that, this is why I work hard at my career. This is why, like, I'm saving money in my 401k.
Yeah.
Like, preparing myself financially for a future, and kind of doing those things to make sure that I will be okay and let them know that.
For sure. Yeah. It's like they want you to be happy, and they have one idea of what that might look like, whereas it could take a lot of different forms for you as well.
And I feel like a part of that too is a little bit of, like, empathy, thinking about my parents' generation and, like, this is what they know.
Yeah, exactly.
So if this is what they know, this is how they knew or know life to go. It's kind of taking a step back to be like, okay, yes, acknowledge that this is like what you think life is, or this is what you were told life is.
Exactly.
And you fulfilled that and you did that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a different way and there's another way, and that way is not wrong, and it doesn't lead to an outcome that is negative.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like I've seen, not to not to give like a doomsday scenario, but there are people, now that I am in my 30s, I've seen people get married and get divorced, and like you don't want to highlight that, but it is kind of the truth, right? If it happens too early, or if it's the wrong thing, or people sometimes will just do it as this band-aid solution of like, oh, well, our relationship is not great, but maybe if we get married, it'll be better, and nothing changes. So it's like, that's not also a solution for your problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And on the parent thing, it's interesting too, because I remember having a very adversarial relationship with my parents because I'm the oldest of three. What birth order are you?
I'm middle child.
Okay. And you have two sisters?
I have two sisters.
Okay.
I have an interesting dynamic with my sisters.
Okay.
Our age gaps is interesting.
Okay. What is your age gap?
My older sister and I are 4 years apart. My younger sister is 11 years younger than me.
Oh, wow. Okay. So she's like very much the baby.
She's very much the baby, but she's taller than me.
Okay.
So she's like, I'm not the baby. I'm like, you go old.
You're like, you are.
I'm 5'2". She's like 5'7".
What?
And I'm like, Mom, what the heck?
Something changed in 11 years.
I know. Like, what the heck, Mom?
That's so funny. But no, this made me think about the relationship I had with my parents around dating and how they were kind of treating me, because again, I'm the oldest. My sisters are actually very close in age to each other, and my middle sister and I are 5 years apart. So I was always kind of much older. And it was the same thing, don't date, boys are bad, and like just focus on school. And throughout college, and then after college, I remember my mom being like, okay, well now, and I just started my career, and I was so excited about actually changing jobs and trying out something that I was really interested in. And my mom is like, well, you should start thinking about marriage now. And I wasn't prepared at all. Like for most of my 20s, I would date here and there, but I didn't really meet anyone that I wanted to be in a relationship with. So I was primarily just single. And I remember it all kind of hit me when I went to my dad's 60th birthday. I was 28, I believe. This was it was a couple years ago. And it was right after COVID. So it was the first big function we had with all of our family, friends, and family. And there were like, hundreds of people there, just everybody in our community in New York. And I was there by myself. And then my sisters actually both had their serious boyfriends come with them, and they're much younger than me. And I never thought it would bother me, but like some part of it, I guess it was more about like, what will people say, that kind of got into my head, where I never thought it would bother me. But then I'm in this group of all of these people kind of like seeing this dynamic play out, and we're taking family pictures, and I'm just like there, right? And I just started to feel like a little overwhelmed, because all these aunties would come up to me, and they wouldn't ask my sisters, because they would ask me first. They would be like, well, when are you getting married, right? And I would just be like, well, like if you know anyone, let me know, right? And then at one point, one of my mom's uncles asked me, and he's much older. He's like my grandma's cousin. He's like, oh, when is your wedding? And I just was like really annoyed and kind of, I don't know if triggered is the right word. Maybe I was being dramatic, but like I literally just walked away in the middle of this because I just couldn't. Like I was like, I get like very emotional and overwhelmed. Like I will not deal with this right now.
Yes.
So I straight up walked away, which is obviously seen as disrespectful and rude. And then he called my mom the next day and was like, hey, I think I offended Omika. You should check in with her. And my mom was like, what happened? So I told her, and I felt so weird telling my parents all of this. And we had this beautiful heart-to-heart for like 3 hours where I just cried and like told them everything. And I feel like for the first time they really saw me and like understood and reflected back to me that like, oh my gosh, no, you're fine. We love you and you have a beautiful life. And my mom was like, your life is like a pie chart and you have all these things going for you and you'll meet someone.
Life is like pie.
Yeah. And I think that was the first time where like just having that heart-to-heart conversation allowed us to kind of break like that adversarial feeling.
Yeah. My parents, so this past winter, I actually flew my parents to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I had them stay with me in my apartment, and I really wanted them there. I wanted to spend the holidays with them. My sister also lives in New York, and we live down the street from each other. But I also really wanted to show them, like, like your daughter's okay.
Yeah.
Like here's her. I really like my apartment, so my beautiful apartment. And we're all gonna stay together in it, and I'm gonna show you like life in New York City.
Yeah.
Like, take you to like the places that I like to go to, and just like show you that Like, I am okay.
Yes.
Your daughter is good and she's fine. And
Yeah.
like, you don't have to worry.
Yeah. No, that's so beautiful. And how did they feel afterwards?
I think they felt good. I think they feel proud. I don't know, like my parents, I feel like are quintessential like Punjabi parents,
Mm-hmm.
not the most vocal about like
Aw.
showing,
Yeah.
like they show love in different ways. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think that the thing that a lot of Indian parents do is like cut fruit. But
Yeah.
this is like we show love by like cutting fruit. So
Yeah.
whenever I'm at home, my mom always has like vegetables cut and like fruit cut, which is like
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Acts of service, right?
Acts of service, exactly. So do you think I think them saying like, no, we are proud of you, and
Mm-hmm.
like you are okay, and I know that, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just like really heartwarming.
Yeah, yeah, and it takes time, and I feel like they're also changing their own perspectives and being challenged, right? Like when we were growing up, they probably thought
Oh,
life was going to look a certain
definitely.
way, and they're growing up as themselves,
Yeah.
right? They're people going through life too,
Exactly.
so I think allowing that is great.
And they're also like in their 60s and 70s, so
Mhm.
they have like 60 years and 70 years of like their opinions being formed.
Exactly.
So they in a lot of ways are set in
Mhm.
certain ways, and certain ways of thinking. And so I think like taking a step back to also understand that and think
Mhm.
that like my parents aren't attacking me when they say certain things. This is just what they know.
Mhm.
And it just takes a little bit of finessing and a little bit of molding to
Mhm.
kind of shift it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when you have your own things going for you and you're a little geographically further away from them, it allows you to also have that space to figure out what are my
Definitely.
thoughts versus what are the things that they believe.
Definitely. Exactly.
Yeah. Um, well, that's amazing. I did want to talk about you had shared on Instagram last year, I believe, about your egg freezing journey. And I know you kind of had talked about it, or you were organizing some other people in New York to talk about it as well. So I think that's a really important topic to talk about, especially, fertility and careers and being an ambitious woman, being independent, taking control of your future. I think it's such an important thing. And obviously, more people are talking about it. But I do think in the South Asian community, we can use more conversations about it. So I did want to chat with you about that. So maybe first, just walk me through your decision making process of how you decided to freeze your eggs and what went into that.
Yeah. So I think when I first started thinking about freezing my eggs, it was in COVID. I mean, it's always been in the back of my head,
Mm-hmm.
but actually looking up clinics and calling clinics and talking to clinics started, I think I had just turned 34, 35. That age range of, okay, you're going to be, geriatric.
Oh my gosh. I know it's so scary when they say that.
And I started looking into egg freezing and like what that process was going to be. And I had a lot of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the first feelings I had was feeling a bit like angry and upset that I even had to do this. So like coming to terms with the fact that I am looking into a fertility option by myself because my life hasn't gone according to like plan or like what was supposed to happen. So I was really upset and angry, and that was an emotion I felt just like calling and kind of sad. And so I kind of took a step back from doing it. I don't think having those emotions was like the best pathway to go down with that sort of like anger and sadness and feeling upset. So I took a step back, and also at the same time I was at a company that didn't supply insurance to cover it. So it was going to be quite expensive, like 11 to like $15,000 out of pocket. In 2023, I actually got laid off from my position that I had at the time, and I took some space. I had like 6 months, and I started to travel and like just started to do stuff. And eventually got to my current role, and I got the position. I accepted the position, moved back to New York, and I was looking at what the company offered as far as insurance goes. And I luckily have a friend in New York who we're the same age. We're both single. She had just started her fertility process to freeze her eggs. And so I had somebody that I could talk to and kind of like work with, and she had the same type of insurance. And so she she was like a beacon of knowledge for me. But the decision, I think, came to me after I had worked through these feelings of like anger and sadness, that I had to do this alone and had to like be in this position. And as a woman, like, why do I have to do this? Like, why don't men have to freeze their sperms? Like,
For reals, yeah.
Yeah, like all these emotions, and then getting to a point where I was 37 at the time, and I just kind of decided, I was like, I want to do this, and it's important for me to have a choice. I want to make a choice now so that I can have a choice later, to have kids in whatever capacity that looks like down the road for me. So, and thankfully my company did have insurance, so, and covered a good amount of it. So it was working through feelings of being disappointed and angry and upset, and also looking at the financial aspect of it, of like what the out-of-pocket cost would be, because that is something that is very important to look at. And eventually it got to a place where I decided to move forward with it. And I froze my eggs last summer.
That's amazing. That's it sounds like an intense journey. And I feel like when you hear about it, when they offer the fertility benefits, or when other people talk about it, sometimes it's framed as a very empowering and freeing thing, or it's like, yeah, I froze my eggs and my company paid for it, and like I have all these choices. But I'm really happy that you brought up those feelings of sadness and anger, because I think that's such a real part of it that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah.
So I am curious to know how you moved through those feelings and how you worked through that.
To be honest, I after I had those feelings, I'd actually started my certification process through IIN. And in doing the coursework of IIN, learning like somatic practices, learning like mindset shifts, kind of using prompts on myself, basically like help, like coaching myself. And I had a therapist at the time as well. I worked through a lot of it, like I would say over that year, between first looking into egg freezing and when I got laid off. And so I worked that I had to work through it. You had to face it, and you have to, for me, it was journaling about it. It was talking to my therapist about it. It was coaching myself through whatever I was learning in IIN at the time. And I will say that it's not all gone. Like there's still a bit of like, I've gone through the process, but I think I've only told my best friends this. Like I was getting, you have to get like IV put in you. And I like started to cry because I went to the clinic by myself that morning, and it's a lot of emotion. You're like coming in, you're doing this process, and you're by yourself. And one of my best friends came in. She came after, but I was sitting there and I just got like a rush of emotion, and I went into the operating room and I was like tearing.
Oh my gosh.
And they're like, "Are you good?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm just like, I just cried." And then I like calmed down, and then I was knocked out, and then I woke up and they were like, "You're done." And I'm like, "Okay, that's great."
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, it comes and goes. Like
it's like
there
all
are
the
aspects
feelings.
of, it comes and goes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I feel like it's almost a metaphor for you, like the way that you talk about the single diaries and the way that you talk about your life now. I'm sure that kind of like helped you move through it.
Yeah.
Kind of simultaneously.
Yeah, I think you kind of when something is in front of you and it's scary and you haven't like worked through it, it's always going to be like an unknown, right? Because you're kind of afraid of it. You're not like, I don't want to say you're not attacking it, but you're not maybe addressing it. And then once you address it, I think you are on the other side. And it's sort of like looking back at maybe like what that fear was, and looking back at it and being able to give yourself the grace of like having the fear in the first place, and also being on the other side to look back and say you worked through it. And it's not to say that the fear is completely gone, but you were able to work on it, address it, like feel your feelings, and kind of move forward and move through it.
Yeah, I always say it's much easier to address something that you can identify and name versus excuse me, like an amorphous fear that you can't put your finger on. You're like, oh, I'm afraid of this, or like it doesn't feel right. But until you're able to identify it, you can't, like you said, you can't address it or really work through it. Is there anything you wish you had known before going through the process?
I feel like I had done a lot of research, and I have a friend who was simultaneously going through it. So I kind of like had a sense of what I was going to experience. I feel like to that end though, like you have a sense of what you're going to experience, but you don't know fully. Like you're injecting your body 3 times a day. And I think the thing I wish I knew would be like the amount of strength needed. And I don't know that like knowing that would have changed anything for me, just like knowing that you need the strength. I think it just would have just been like the realization that this is a lot.
Yeah.
And when I went through, I knew it was a lot, but then until you go through it, you don't realize like how a lot that is. Like it was the first time I went through the injections. I did the injections. I was like sitting in my bathroom and I had everything set up, and I'd had my friend on the phone, and she was like, do you want me to come over? And I'm like, no, I'm okay. I just like need to do this. And I would be like, and I would count down like, okay, 3, 2, 1. And then I would just look down and I'd be like, okay,
again,
3, 2, 1. And then I'd be like, Asees, you can do this. And then I put my hype music on. It's like some,
oh my God.
I listen to like some like West Coast rap sometimes, or a lot. And so I have like Tupac or like California Love on, and I'm like, you can do this. It has nothing to do with egg freezing, but I'm like, you can do this. I'm like, from Diego to the Bay, and like insert. But it's a lot to do, and I didn't realize that going into it.
Yeah, and you mentioned you had the friend who was going through it or had gone through it at that point. Are there other people that you relied on, or other parts of your community that you tapped into?
I feel like she was a big person that I just because of the timing of it. It was last summer. There was like, it was June to, I think that my egg retrieval was July 4th.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like end of June to July 4th. So it was just a couple weeks. And she was a big, the person who had gone through it was a big, just like source of information for me. And then I had my best friend who I would call and talk to about it. She hadn't gone through it yet or had it, but she's just like a source of comfort. I have family members who have done it, but they were like out of pocket at that time. But after I talked to them about it, so it really was like that best friend, and then my other girlfriend who had just gone through it, who I feel like I really relied on. But a lot of it also was just in going, like as a corporate girl, you kind of just go into this mode of like, okay, I just need to do X, Y, Z. I have so much stuff on my plate with work. I just need to like get this done. So a lot of it was like making a schedule and sticking to it and just boom, 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 boom.
Wow. I've had friends go through the egg retrieval process or through IVF while working, and they've always been frustrated because their coworkers don't understand, especially if they're men. So I'm curious to know if you had talked to anyone about it or brought it up.
My career is very female, like dominant or women dominant. PR has a lot of ladies in it, and so the people that I work with, one of them had actually gone through it. Like she had gone through IVF. So I felt comfortable talking about it and letting them know. And I think my company, our little team also, we have the working relationship where I could say like, by the way, I'm going to the clinic this morning. I'll be offline. And it was okay.
Yeah.
And she would be like, are you okay? Like, do you need, I actually was supposed to work a conference the week my egg retrieval like process started. And I had to tell her, I can't go because like I am going to be doing blood work. I'm going to be doing ultrasounds. Like, she's like, no worries, all good. So I think thankfully I had colleagues who had either gone through it or were very understanding to the point that I could just say, I'm doing this. And they were like, okay, cool. Won't bother you.
I think that's such a big advantage because there are situations where they might not understand or you can't even, you don't have that flexibility. So I think that's such an important thing to bring up.
I was very grateful for that.
Yeah, that's so cool. And then I know you had mentioned some people in your family had gone through it. Did you talk to your parents about this, or did you talk to people in your family?
I think I told my mom. I did. My mom and my older sister had come to, did a visit to New York in April, and I told them about it. And I was actually very taken aback with one of the conversations because both of them were like, embryos freeze better than just like eggs.
Oh.
Have you thought about like a sperm donor?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what?
Okay.
I was like, what? And then my mom and my sister were like, yeah, just like, throwing that out there if that's something that you would ever consider. And I was
wow.
I have thought about it, but I never I'm not at the point yet where I would move forward with that. But I was just like so taken aback that was like, maybe embryos freeze better. Like, have you thought about a sperm donor? I'm like,
wow. There is always a surprise.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
That's funny. Yeah. No, I only ask because I've heard of some parents in different immigrant communities being cautious about it, or they don't really fully understand it. They're like, why would you do that? Or just do everything naturally. But I'm glad it is becoming more normalized. So it seems like people are more accepting.
Yeah, I think so. My mom actually, interestingly, moved to America when she was 9.
Oh, okay.
So she grew up in LA, went to high school, went to Cal State LA. My mom's younger sister, my Masi, also, she moved here when she was 5. And so I feel like the women in my family are a little bit more progressive.
That's amazing.
And then my dad, he's like 1 against 4 women.
Same.
So I think my dad, as he's gotten older, has gotten to a point. He always just says to me, he's like, I just want you to be happy.
Yeah.
He's like, I just want my princess to be happy. I'm like, when do you start using the word princess? Because he never said that.
That's
before.
So funny. They get more interesting as they get older.
I know, they're getting more emotional. I'm like,
yeah. You're like, what is happening?
I like it. Good for you to say and feel and to express, but I'm like, I'm just not used to it.
My last question around this is around dating. I know you mentioned you are dating right now. Does this come up in conversations? How's that process been?
I think it used to. I am not as forthcoming about my dating life with my family.
Okay.
Today, I was very open with them in my 20s.
Yeah.
I think the shift for me there is that dating is not easy, or I just personally haven't found it to be very easy. And I will tell them about a person when I meet somebody who I personally feel like is worth telling them about. And so they're like, they'll be like, are you dating? And I'm like, sorry, mom. Like, no. Or I'll get ready to go out. And they're like, who are you going out with? I'm like, my girlfriend.
Yeah.
One of my girlfriend's names. They're like, oh. They're like, are you dating? Like, nobody wants, what's going on? And I'm like, no, mom, sorry. I'm just, no. Sorry to burst your bubble.
Yeah.
I think I had an Instagram story a little while ago where I was going on a hot date, and it was the holiday time frame, but I was going to go babysit my best, one of my good friends'
oh my gosh,
child. This little 4-month-old cutest, and I was like, I have the cutest date, and then everybody was like, yes, oh my god, go.
And then you're like, sorry.
And then it was funny because I was like, we got sushi, and then he just fell asleep on me because I was actually holding him
literally on you.
And everyone was like, what? He fell asleep on you? And then the next picture I showed was the baby. They're like, oh my god, Asees. I was I have a sense of humor.
Disappointing. Aw. Well, no, I love that. Is there anything, based on everything we chatted about, is there anything else you want to share? Any other words of wisdom?
I feel like for women these days, I'm actually doing this thing in March. If anybody, I don't know when this is going to air, but I do this thing called Main Character Mornings. And the whole point of Main Character Mornings is that I think we show up in our life sometimes it's hard for us to show up in our life as the main character because of so many external factors, whether it's your job, whether it's, I don't know, sometimes it's the kids, sometimes it's a partner, whatever it is, there are external factors that prevent us from showing up for ourselves and like doing things for ourselves first. And so one of the things that I started to do is called Main Character Mornings, which essentially is for 1 week every month. I've done it in February. I'm doing what in March, 17th to the 21st.
Okay.
You wake up at 5:30 in the morning, and the first thing you do is you have to do something for yourself. Like, I don't care what it is. It's just you, whether it's like taking that long hot shower, which I miss right now, whether it's cooking yourself an amazing meal, like being able to give yourself the space to do that. Sometimes it's cleaning. It's just doing something for yourself, not looking at your phone first, not checking an email, not sending that out. But just being able to like do something and put yourself first. And the difference that that makes, I think it's really important. So I feel like that's something that I wanted to share, both if people wanted to join the challenge, but also just something to keep in the back of your mind, to try to put yourself first and to not feel bad about it, and to like embrace that.
Yeah, I think it's so important we say, like, you need to pour into yourself first before you can pour into other people anyway.
Yeah.
And I feel like energetically lately, I've also been thinking about like, okay, how do I feel like I give so much of my energy to others, and not in a way of like, oh, I'm just like helping and giving, but even at work or when you're doing things that like require someone else to respond to you, you're kind of like giving away some of your power. So like, how do you bring that energy back to yourself and like become more of a magnet for what you want and what you want to create and share? Yeah, so I love that because that's something that's definitely been on my mind too.
Yeah, and I also think that having that space for yourself to show for yourself and to do something for yourself at the beginning of your day. I personally experienced this where I did it one morning and I had to work until like 8 that night. And I was supposed to go to a solid core like Pilates class, and I had done something for myself in the morning, and I was like, thank goodness that I had done that, because I would have felt so upset by the end of the day that I had to cancel something. I couldn't do something for myself. I couldn't like have that part of my life at the end of the day. But I had done stuff for myself in the morning. And I think it also just like as a mindset shift towards the end of the day to be like, it's okay. You know, like,
yeah, because you never know what's going to happen throughout the day. Like, people are going to be pulling at your attention in different ways. I used to think it was overrated to have like a morning routine or something to do, but now I'm like, no, this is so important because it really does build that momentum.
I was just like, oh my god, 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
they just do it for the Instagram. I'm just like, wait, no, actually,
this is amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much again for for doing this. I feel like I could talk to you forever, and unfortunately we have to end this with the studio, but yes, thank you so much again for sharing. Do you mind sharing where people can find you? I know you mentioned the Main Character Mornings, but any other ways people can connect with you?
Yeah, I think the best way is on Instagram. My handle is at Asees K, so ASEESK, like kangaroo. And that would be the best way.
Yay, awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you. This is great.